I picked up this handy little electronics repair kit with miniature screwdrivers and pry tools at Harbor Freight recently. Not a bad little buy for about $36 as I recall, without any sale or coupon or anything. Gives you tweezers, pry tools, spudgers, as they would call them in England. Big Clive uses the term a lot. And has a magnetized bit holder and a whole bunch of miniature bits, including some that are kind of hard to find. You'll notice that it has not only Phillips bits, but it has JIS bits, which are Japanese Industrial Standard bits, which have a different angle and a different depth, and it's really easy to chew up the Japanese screws that conform to that standard if you use an ordinary Phillips screwdriver. But this one actually includes the bits from a number 1 down to the tiny 000 size. And of course, it's also got the ubiquitous Torx bits, including the security type with a hole in the middle of the bit, 5-star pentalobes, hex bits, Allen wrench type bits, some sockets, aka nut drivers, square Robertson bits, Game Boy bits, I guess, not something I work on. A little eject tool for your SIM card on a phone, triangular bits, and a magnetic pickup bit, as well as an iPhone standoff bit. I don't own an iPhone, and I don't work with game players, so not something I would use there, but primarily, helpful for small electronics, guys who maybe want to, whether it's disassemble a remote control to fix it, or any other kind of electronic device. If you're doing your own or attempting your own cell phone, smartphone repair, it probably has most of what you need in it. I'll show you the kit itself. First of all, it has plastic pry tools, a suction cup, pretty strong one, that has a lever to activate and deactivate the suction, probably to help you get the 2 clamshell halves of a smartphone apart. Not something I would probably use, but there is a wrist strap for grounding in case you're working on things with really sensitive microchips and microprocessors that might get zapped by even 50 volts of static electricity. You can ground your body to prevent that. It has some tweezers, which are electrically probably not conductive, or maybe made of a carbon plastic to prevent sparks. That's actually, the black tips are actually, it's kind of hard to see here, but the black tips are not metal, not ordinary metal. And it's got, tweezers, ordinary tweezers. Two different, where'd the other ones go? 2 different profiles of tweezers, as you can see. Another plastic pry tool. A curved and a straight pointed end. This is plastic also. And a little, probably a pull tool for wires with a little hook in it, as well as kind of a chisel end. And finally, it's got a nice little spudger, metal, paddle shaped. One's a little rounded on the end, and one is slightly more pointed. I used that recently for prying something apart, and I don't recall what it was. And a different sort of a spudger, just a thin-edged, non-sharp knife blade, with a plastic handle. Not a bad little set. Now, the bits that come with it include miniature hex head sockets for very small bolts and machine screws. There's a magnetic pickup bit right here. And then it's got, let's see, I have a little chart offhand. It's got metric hex Allen here, okay? And then it has an iPhone standoff bit, I think, in one of these rows. It's got Robertson square bits. There's an oval bit of some kind, must be some kind of oval head screw that it fits, probably something you find in your, either in phones or maybe in your game devices, for those who are into that. Really interesting is that it, as I mentioned before, it has the JIS Phillips, which you might be able to see right here. Say J1, J0, J00, and also J000, 000. Here, I think, actually. I don't particularly like the way they marked it on the foam. It's hard to read, and it's easy to look at the symbols are underneath each bit, but it's easy to think it's above each bit and get confused. So actually the JIS bits, for instance, are right here. Then it's got security torques. You can see it's got holes in them. And flat blades, pretty obvious. Pentalobe screws, which are, I think, the five-star lobe. You can kind of see it there, maybe. Yeah, so there's a little 5-star embedded in the foam. And finally, your triangular bits and ordinary Phillips from 0001 and number 2, also the 000 Phillips. Every kit I've ever seen has a tendency to lay things out sort of weird, where you've got all of them in one row and a couple in the next row or a couple above, kind of sucks. That's why I made up a half-ass chart here. I'm sure I could do a better job showing where they are, or maybe color code the ends of them with a little bit of magic marker, some Sharpie, and make it easier to find the ones that I would be most likely to use. But it was interesting in that it's the first such kit I've seen with the JIS, Japanese Industrial Standard Phillips. And be advised that if you are working on something that uses those types of screws and you use an ordinary Phillips, it's really, really easy to chew them all up, because the fit is not the same. Anybody who has Japanese motorcycles and does their own work might have found out this sort of thing on their own, the hard way. And of course, Japanese stereo equipment frequently was assembled with JIS screws, sometimes notated with a tiny little divot or hole of sorts punched into the screw head, but on really tiny stuff you probably won't find it or won't see it. The set also has, a magnetized screwdriver, so you can just stick your bits in there. Got a pretty reasonable magnet. It'll pick up ferrous material screws moderately well. If you need to get into a molded plastic well on a thicker device like, I don't know, a remote controller or what have you, you might be SOL, because they give you an extension, but of course it's a little bit fat and it may not fit down in there. So sometimes it's handy to buy a kit from somewhere else that has bits that are several inches long. But for a lot of disassembly stuff, you know, for small electronics, it should do the job. I've got a few other cheap sets that I've bought elsewhere that aren't half bad. None of them had the JIS screws though, but this is one I picked up at a job lot type store for about 10 bucks, 12 bucks, whatever, something like that. And more or less the same, but you'll see that I added SAE hex because it only included metric. And I also added a holder with some Robertson square drive bits because this kit didn't include it, and I can sort of fit it in there if I'm careful. But not, you know, not a bad little set, but same kind of thing. It's got an extension that's a little large, and it may not fit down into you know, some tunnels. And this piece requires this piece to work. It doesn't really hold the bit, or it's hard to get the bit out on its own here, and it's not magnetic in there. But it will allow you some extension room if the device you're working on allows you to get down in there with this fat little coupling. So anyway, that's pretty much it. I said, you know, I've seen other weird little sets along these lines at Walmart and other places. Everybody should pretty much have one, but this has got some of the odd stuff that you know, Game Boy and smartphone modifier, repairer, swap your own battery kind of things might want, assuming that the device doesn't brick itself when you take it apart. So that's about it, really. And here's the back of the box again. That's it. Hope you find this useful.